So a very warm good morning to all who joined. We'll start the session sharp at 10 a.m. We'll just wait for another 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so good morning all. A warm welcome to one and all. Today we are here with another session, which is frequently asked automation interview questions. As we all know, it's a common trend in the QA area as automation is getting more and more traction these days. So that is the main reason that why we are focusing more into automation today. So today we'll focus more into Selenium, and in the upcoming days, yeah, definitely we'll scale into other tools as well. So without any further ado, let's get started. So Anju, it's over to you. Yeah, it's all yours. You can start.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. We would be discussing today frequently asked automation interview questions. So we'll start with the basic Selenium. Then in the subsequent sessions, we'll be focusing on the advanced Selenium topics. So let's get started. Okay. So this is the first set of Selenium questions. So do you have any preference, or can we go with the first one? Do you need me to pick any of the questions from this, or can we go in order?
Hey, so everyone, please try to use the chat window. So those who have been in the YouTube or even in the Zoom, please type in your selection. I mean, we'll go with your selection in the beginning itself. So which is the toughest question which you think that need to be answered first? I mean, which one you want to hear? Any choice? Yeah. I think comments are coming up.
So, sir, can you please tell me the question number once I'm not able to view the chat? So it would be
it's
good
question
if you...
number. It's the first question. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with the first question. What is Webdriver?
Yes.
Okay. So what is actually Webdriver? Webdriver is nothing but an open source collection of APIs, which is used for testing web application. So it is used for automating web application testing to verify that it works as expected or not. And it supports browsers like Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and Internet Explorer. And it also permits you to execute cross-browser testing. You all might know what a cross-browser testing is. It is testing in multiple browsers, not just a single browser. And WebDriver also enables you to use a programming language in creating your test scripts. And WebDriver supports multiple programming languages. So in short, we can say that WebDriver is an API, which is a platform and language neutral interface that allows programs or scripts to introspect into and control the behavior of web browser. Are you all clear? I hope it is clear.
Yes,
so WebDriver, in short, is a collection of APIs to interact with the browsers. Okay. Shall we move to the next question? Is WebDriver an interface or a class? WebDriver. So I'll just show you the... Okay. So this is the structure. So WebDriver, as you all know, is a interface, not a class or an abstract class. You can see that WebDriver is on the top level, and all the subclass and all the classes are implementing the WebDriver. So this WebDriver consists of all related basic methods which could be performed on a browser. And each of the browser drivers implement these methods in their own way. So we can say that WebDriver is an interface, not a class. Can we go to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, why do we write WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver instead of Chrome driver is equal to new Chrome driver? Or the question may be, why don't you write WebDriver driver is equal to new WebDriver? New WebDriver. So why don't we write WebDriver driver is equal to new WebDriver? we cannot create an object of the interface. As I told you, WebDriver is an interface, and hence we cannot create an object of the interface. So that is why we don't write WebDriver driver is equal to new WebDriver. So why we write WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver? Why can't we write Chrome driver is equal to new Chrome driver? If we write Chrome driver is equal to new Chrome driver, we can only run our scripts in Chrome browser. Okay, we'll only be able to invoke and act on the methods implemented by the Chrome driver and supported by the Chrome browser. We cannot run our test in any other browser. So if we want to run our script in Firefox driver, we again have to create the object as Firefox driver is equal to new Firefox driver. So we don't get the flexibility to use other browsers. The object that has been created for Chrome driver cannot be used to run the scripts on Firefox driver. To solve this, we are using WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver. So what are we doing here? We are creating an object of the Chrome driver class by taking a reference of the WebDriver interface. That is, we are creating an instance of the WebDriver interface and casting it to Chrome driver. So what is the advantage of doing this? We could switch once we run the test in Chrome driver, we can easily switch into Firefox driver just by giving the driver is equal to new Firefox driver. Hence, we can do testing on multiple browsers. So that is why we are writing WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver or new Firefox driver or new iDriver, Internet Explorer driver, like that. Are you all clear?
Yeah, guys, I mean, please use the chat window if you need any more clarification or if you have any doubts. So, I mean, let's make the session more interactive. So, yeah, I could see a few S coming up. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Okay, so one of the basic questions that would be asked for the interview is like advantages and disadvantages of Selenium, because you would be working in Selenium and you should know why Selenium is used, what are its advantages and disadvantages, right? So we would be moving on to the next question, advantages and disadvantages of Selenium. We would be first discussing about advantages. Okay, so as you all know, Selenium is a pure open source freeware tool, right? Open source freeware means there is no payment needed for using this tool. Unlike UFT or Tosca, we need not pay anything. So that is the main advantage of using Selenium. So it is open source freeware tool that we can use. Anybody can use Selenium from any part of the world. Okay. And as I told before, it supports a variety of languages. You can code in Java, you can code in Perl, Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Groovy, VB script. It supports all programming languages. And also the operating systems. Selenium will work on Windows, Macintosh, Linux, and Unix. You can run your scripts even if you are using a Mac or Windows. So that is a third advantage. And Selenium also supports many browsers. You can run your test in Chrome. You can run your test in Firefox, Edge, any browsers you like, you can do it. And also Selenium can be integrated with Maven or Ant, that is used for build management. The next advantage is that Selenium can be integrated with TestNG testing framework for testing our applications and generating the reports, test reports. The next advantage of Selenium is that it can be integrated with Jenkins or Hudson for continuous integration. And the last, due to these advantages, the most important thing is that it will save money and time since we can reuse the code. So we have discussed here 8 main advantages of Selenium. I'll repeat once again, it is a pure open source tool. That is, we don't need to pay anything to use Selenium. It supports a wide variety of languages, which includes Java, Perl, Python, JavaScript, Groovy, etc. It supports many operating systems like Windows, Linux, Macintosh, etc. It supports many browsers like Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. It can be integrated with Ant or Maven, that is the build management tool. It can be integrated with TestNG for testing our applications and generating test reports. It can be integrated with Jenkins or Hudson for continuous integration. And at last, due to all these advantages, we can save money and time because we are creating reusable code. I hope it is clear. Can we move on to the disadvantages?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. So coming to the disadvantages of Selenium, it only supports web-based application. It does not support Windows-based application. All that you see on the internet can be tested. The applications which have UI can be tested using Selenium. It is difficult to test image-based applications using Selenium. And as I told you, Selenium does not have inbuilt report generation facilities. It depends on TestNG or extend report for test report generation. It does not have a inbuilt report generation facility. And also Selenium lacks online support for the problems they face. That is, if we face any issues, we don't have we don't have an opportunity to raise a ticket. Like unlike in Tosca or UFT, we can raise tickets. If we have a problem with, we can contact the company which provides Tosca or UFT. That is, Tosca is provided by Tricentis and UFT is provided by HP. So we can contact the companies directly and they would provide a solution. So unlike that, for Selenium, it lacks online support. And also Selenium does not have an inbuilt IDE for script generation. So currently, as we all know, for writing test scripts, we use Eclipse or IntelliJ, right? Selenium does not have an inbuilt IDE for script generation. So that is one of the disadvantage. And Selenium cannot handle CAPTCHA, and Selenium cannot test mobile applications, and it also does not support file upload facility. So are you all clear? Let me repeat once again. It supports web-based application only and not Windows-based. It is difficult to test image-based application. Selenium needs outside support for report generation activities like TestNG or Jenkins. It lacks online support for the problems they face and does not have any inbuilt IDE for script generation. We need to depend upon Eclipse or IntelliJ for writing the scripts. It cannot handle CAPTCHA. It cannot test mobile applications, and it does not support file upload facility. To upload a file or something, the feature that we use is Auto IT. It can be integrated with Selenium scripts. I hope it is clear. Can we move on to the next question?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the next question is, what are the variants of Selenium? So if you see on the screen, The variants of Selenium are Selenium Webdriver, Selenium Ide, Selenium Grid. Okay, so we'll first talk about what is Selenium Ide. So Selenium Ide, the full form of Ide is Integrated Development Environment. It is actually a Firefox plugin. This was developed first, and it is the simplest framework in the Selenium suite. Okay, and what is the feature of Selenium Ide? If someone asks you, what will you say? The main feature of Selenium IDE is that it allows us to record and play back the script. What do you mean by recording and playing back the script? Recording a test corresponds to recording the user actions of the application under the test. You record, like we user will record whatever actions are required, and the tool automatically generates the scripts that can be played back, and we can use that scripts for test execution. So that is the main feature of Selenium IDE. But the disadvantage of Selenium IDE is that it can be only used with Firefox. It is a Firefox plugin. So that is about Selenium IDE. Now it is not much in use, but still in market. So next, before Selenium WebDriver, there was a variant called Selenium Rc. So Selenium Rc is remote control, okay, and it was the Selenium version 1, okay, and it was used for generating the scripts, okay, and it is still actively supported, and it relies on JavaScript for automation. It supports Java, JavaScript, Ruby, all PHP, Python, Perl, and C#, and it almost supports every browser out there. So in the Selenium version 2, this RC was combined and Selenium WebDriver was evolved. And what is Selenium WebDriver? If you want to create a robust browser-based automation suite or test, we use Selenium WebDriver. It is a browser automation framework that accepts commands and sends it to the browser. So it controls the browser by directly communicating with it. It supports, as I told you, Selenium WebDriver supports a wide variety of programming languages, OS, multiple browsers, etc. And coming to Selenium Grid, if you want to run the test scripts in different machine, that is, if you want to distribute and run the test cases in different machines, then we use Selenium Grid. So the feature that we get from the Selenium Grid is called cross-browser test. You can use different browsers in different machines and run the test. Are you all clear? Any doubts?
No, I think we are good to move.
Okay. So one of the main questions that the interviewer may ask is that what is the version of Selenium that you are currently using? To make sure that you are working in Selenium, everybody is supposed to know the version of the Selenium that you are working on. Have you guys ever checked on the version of the Selenium when you download the Selenium jar or add the dependency in your pom.xml? You should. If you haven't, you should. So currently the version that I am using is 3.14.59. So everybody should check the version of the Selenium that you are using. You can either check in pom.xml, or if you are adding the external jar, you can check the version in the jar. Are you all clear about that? Can we move ahead?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So now we are coming into Selenium. Whatever that we have discussed is the theory part. So now we are coming into the code. Okay. So the first question is how you will launch a browser. So what is the step to launch a browser? So as you all know, to launch a browser, we need to set the property of whatever browser driver that you are using to the system. We have to set the system property. If you are using Chrome driver, you need to set the system property to the path of the Chrome driver exe file. And then what you need to do is instantiate a Chrome driver class. So if you check on the code, this is, oh, sorry. So how do you set the property for the Chrome driver? For example, if you are using the Chrome driver, what is the command? What is the line of code that you need to write when you want to set the property? It is system.set property. Then in quotes, you give webdriver.chrome.driver and you give the path of the Chrome driver. This Chrome driver should be locally downloaded and kept in your machine. Only then we would be able to interact with the browsers. That is, I meant we is Selenium. Only then Selenium can interact with the browser. Selenium first interacts with the Chrome driver, which in turn interacts with the corresponding browser. And then what you need to do is instantiate a Chrome driver class. This line of code has been discussed earlier. Webdriver driver is equal to a new Chrome driver. Here what we are doing, we are creating an object of the Chrome driver class by taking the reference of the WebDriver interface. That is, we are creating an instance of the WebDriver interface and casting it to Chrome driver. And then driver.get in quotes, when you give the URL that you need to hit, the browser will be launched. And when you run the script, the browser will be launched and the URL will be opened. These are the basic things that you need to learn in Selenium. And I hope everybody is clear on this. Can we move on to the next question? Any doubts?
Yes, I think we are good here.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move.
So what is the advantage of launching URL by navigate command compared with get? As you all know, you can launch the URL by using the navigate command as well as the get command. Navigate, the URL is that will come in the next set. The syntax for writing the navigate command and the get command. So what is the advantage of launching the URL? Both does the same function, that is opening up the URL. But the difference is that when you use driver.get, it does not maintain the browser history and the cookies. So we can't go forward or backward. That is, if you open up a browser, there will be a button to go backward and go frontward. No, so that action will not be, we cannot use that action if you use driver.get. On the other hand, if you use driver.navigate function for launching the URL, the browser history and the cookies will be stored so that we can go forward and backward, backward to navigate between the pages during test case execution. Are you all clear? The main advantage is that the browser history will be stored if you are using the navigate command, and in get command, the browser history will not be stored. Can we go to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay. So why is it necessary to maximize a browser in Selenium automation? Why is it necessary? So elements on the web application may not be recognized by Selenium if the browser is not maximized, and thereby making our test scripts fail. It may work or may not work. To make sure that our scripts work, we maximize the browser. That is the use of maximizing the browser, to make sure that all the elements will be identified and our test will be executed successfully. So it is always a good practice to maximize the browser while automating any web application. And when do we maximize the browser? It is usually done at the start of the script so that the script gets executed successfully without error. So the command that we use for maximizing the browser is driver.manage.window.maximize. In case you want to set the size of the browser, the command that we use is you go to the URL, and then dimension is one of the features that we can use for setting the size. We create an object of the dimension and then we set the size. Driver.manage.window.set size. So the window will not be maximized, but it will be opening in the specified dimension. We can resize the current window to the dimension we specify. So interviewer may ask how you set a specific dimension to the browser window. If you want to maximize, you can directly give maximize. We can use the maximize function. If you want to set a specific size to the browser window, then you need to use the dimensions. You need to create the object of the dimension and then specify the dimension and then use set size method of the window function. Okay, are you all clear on that?
Yes. So basically, we need to maximize the browser in the beginning of the testing itself. I mean, before
Yes.
launching the application, we need to make sure the browser is.
After launching the application, it is better you give this command driver.manage.window.maximize.
Okay, so that should be the first command when the application is launched.
After setting the property. After setting the property like the set property and then creating the Chrome driver object, then you hit the URL and the next line of code would be maximizing.
Okay, got it. Yeah, clear.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So can we move on to the next question?
Yes, please.
Just a second. Maybe we can take a quick pause here and we'll answer some of the questions that we have in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay. So there was a question can you mention what we use for uploading images in Selenium? Okay, Anju, you want to answer that?
Uploading images, we can use the auto IT feature. That would be discussing later in the session, not in this session, the subsequent sessions.
And also there is just to add on to that, we can use the send keys to provide the path of the image and upload it directly wherever it supports. So that is a default feature available within Selenium. Or if it is not supported, we can go for the third-party tools.
Yes.
And also we have another question: what is the difference between Selenium 3 and Selenium 4? So let me answer that question. So
yes.
Basically, Selenium 4 is a latest version of Selenium. So it was newly introduced, which has rich features compared to Selenium 3. So the major difference is in the architecture, where in Selenium 4, it is using W3 standards. So it is way more efficient than Selenium 3. It is more stable. The Actions API is improved to cover more functionalities. And also it has brought many standards, which brings up the opportunities for promoting compatibility beyond Webdriver API implementations. So mostly the changes are in the architecture, and people will start using Selenium 4 and going forward once it is officially released. Okay. So do we have any questions in YouTube?
Yeah, we have one. So the question is, it will automatically maximize. So I mean, maybe he's trying to articulate like, will Selenium automatically maximize the browser or no?
It depends on the application. Some applications will not automatically maximize. So
Okay.
in that case, you need to specify the maximize
So the recommended
method.
approach would be like, we can give
It
a
is
line of
always,
code to maximize.
yes, it is always good that we maximize the browser and then proceed with the test scripts.
Okay, just to add on to that, there will be cases like, we want to test applications against a particular screen size. So in that case, our normally when application is released, the testing will be certified against certain screen sizes. Okay, so if you want to specifically test that screen size, you can provide the screen size. Okay, rather than just maximizing it, to make sure that in any screen resolution, the browser will be set to the particular screen size that we provide. So that is also another approach that we can implement.
Okay. So do you have any more questions before into moving to the other questions? I mean, yeah. Any questions from the YouTube or any questions in the chat box?
So please feel free to type in your questions. So we'll try to answer them at any point. Okay, maybe we can continue with the questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is how you will refresh a page. What is the Selenium command to refresh a page? So there are different methods by which you can refresh a page. The common method that we use is driver.navigate.refresh method. And what does this refresh do? Page refresh operation ensures that all the web elements of a page are loaded completely before we proceed with our test case automation. So why a page is refreshed? What is the reason behind refreshing a page is that it ensures that all the elements of the page are loaded completely before we proceed with our test case automation. So the common command that we use for refreshing a page is driver.navigate.refresh method. You can also use driver.get. When you use driver.get or driver.navigate.to, it has recursive ways to refresh a page. It provides recursive way when you launch the driver.get and driver.navigate to will hit the URL and open up the URL. Uh, in that way itself, it is in a way refreshing the browser. Okay, and other way that we can refresh is using the send key methods. That is, you launch a URL, then you identify an element, and then you use send keys and give F5. And then even you can give the ASCII code of F5 so that it will be refreshed. So these are the main ways by which you can refresh a page. Using the refresh method, even when you use get and navigate to, the page is getting refreshed, and then you can use the F5 to the keyboard button F5 to refresh. That will be used using the send keys and also the ASCII code for F5. Are you all clear? Any doubts?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. So we are moving on to the next set of questions. I hope all the questions in the first set is clear. All the questions are clear, and if any questions from this set is asked for the interview, I hope everybody would be able to answer the questions very confidently. Can we move on to the next set?
Maybe Any more questions from the areas that we discussed so far? Any questions in the YouTube? I think everybody is saying yes. So
I hope everybody is understanding what I'm saying.
yes, because that is the reason we are getting so many yes here. So
Okay.
we can
Thank
move
you.
on. No
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you all for the response. Okay, so we are moving on to the next set.
Yeah, hold on. One
Okay.
question in the YouTube. So why we need to use find element before send key F5? F5.
So you cannot, if you press F5, you have to give F5 through send keys only. So send keys will work only if you find an element, right? So once the web page is launched, we need to identify an element, and then you you need to give F5. So F5 can be only, it is a button, right? It is a button in the keyboard. So if Selenium wants to click the F5 button, we need to use send keys. So in order to use send keys, we need to find an element in the web page. Is it clear?
Yes. I think
That is,
we have the point.
send keys works only on web elements rather than the browser. So that is why we must initially identify a valid web element on the web page and then use the send key methods. I hope it is clear.
Okay. Yeah. I think in the chat box we have one more comment, like if we give wait, then will it work instead of find elements?
Wait.
And yeah, she was articulating like instead of using find element, can we use wait?
But F5 can be pressed only by using send keys, right? So I did not understand the use
Maybe
of wait.
Maybe it's a different context. So we can move on to the next question.
Okay.
Or can you? Or the question can be rephrased in a different way. So we can wait for the different ways articulation of that question. We can move on to the next.
Okay. 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 Are you able to see the 11th question?
Yes. It's absolutely clear.
How to launch a URL. So we have discussed it just a little before. Still, I will explain it. See, how to launch a URL. You can give the URL and then use driver.get or driver.navigate.to and you give the URL. So launching a web browser and loading a URL are the basic steps to get started with the Selenium WebDriver. So why do you want to launch a URL? Because to work on that web page, we first need to open the browser and launch the URL. So the Selenium command that we use for launching the URL is driver.get and you give the URL in quotes, driver.navigate.to, you give the URL in quotes. Or you can assign the URL to a variable like I have done here, string URL is equal to, and you give that variable as the argument. So driver.get will take the URL as the argument. Okay. Are you all clear? This is the basic step of Selenium, basic command of Selenium, and I hope it is clear.
Yes. We are good in this.
So the next question is how to get the current page URL in Selenium. So we can obtain the URL of the current page in Selenium, and this is achieved by using the command driver.getCurrentURL. No argument is required, but what this function returns is a string. Okay, the method accepts no parameters but returns a string. And if you print that string in the console, you would be, if you print that string, you would be able to see the current URL in the console. I hope it is clear.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
good.
So how to count the character length of current URL? So how do you calculate the character length of the current URL? First, you need to obtain the current URL. How do you obtain the current URL? In the last question, we have discussed that we can get the current URL with the help of the command driver.get current URL. Then it returns a string, as I said before. And once you get the string, we can calculate the length of the string with the help of length function. I hope it is clear. First obtains the current URL and then use the length method to get the character length of the current URL. I hope it is clear.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So how do you assert the title of the web page? So to assert the title of the web page, the first thing that we need to do is get the title of the page. How do we get the title of the page? By using the browser command driver.get title. So this command takes nothing as the parameter but returns a string. And you can check that string against your expected string. That is what it is written here. First, for the variable actual title, we get the title from the driver, and then we are giving the expected title, and then you are asserting the actual title and the expected title. I hope it is clear.
Yes, basically we are trying to make a string comparison here, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. If you want the thing to be printed in the console, you can use that equals to. If actual title dot equals to expected titles, you can give a system.out.println. The title is correct, else you can give title is incorrect. You can use that also. Here I have used assertion statement. I hope it is clear.
So there is a question, what do you mean by assert? Or
that assert is just verifying whether it is a way of verifying whether the thing that we give and what we get from the browser are equal or they match. So that topic will be covered in the subsequent sessions. We'll be coming into that in detail. Assertion means nothing but verification.
Okay. I think we have one more question in the chat window. That is it is a Boolean or not? You mean that assertion is a Boolean or not? That's what the question is? Or the return type is a Boolean? So,
Yes, assert the return. It will be. It will compare the actual title and the expected title.
yeah, let me take that question. So basically there are different types of assertions. So currently it is comparing these two strings, actual title and expected title. So this is string based assertion. Similarly, we have Boolean based assertions, like we will check whether it is a true or false. So that is another part of it. Okay, there are different types of assertions possible. We will be discussing that later. Yeah.
So in the same context, we have one more question in the Facebook. So the example that we showed in the screen, in that case, the return type will be a Boolean type or not?
It will just be a pass or fail. It's actually assertion. So when you come into the assertions, when you learn assertions in detail, you will come to know. Here nothing will be returned. This will just compare the two strings, And if it is equal, the test case will be a pass, else the test case will be a fail.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I think we can move on to the next context. I mean, next question, ideally. Yeah.
Okay. What is the difference between close and quit command? That is driver.close and driver.quit. So driver.close command is used to close the current browser window having the focus. So if you are working on a application and it is opened in a tab and the focus is on the current tab or maybe a window, if you want to close that particular window, you can use driver.close. Whereas driver.quit is used to quit the whole browser session along with all the associated browser windows, tabs, and pop-ups. So if you are launching an application, which in turn opens up different tabs. So if you want to close all the tabs and close the browser, then you can use driver.quit. So driver.quit is used when we no longer want to interact with the driver object, and it is one of the last statements of the automation scripts. So one of the last statements that we use in the automation script is driver.quit. Driver.close will close only the current window or the current tab. I hope it is clear.
Any more questions in the close and quit? Because this is one of the widely asked questions in almost all the automation interviews. Any questions here? Or else we can move forward. Yeah, I think we are good.
Okay.
The questions coming.
The 16th question. So far we have discussed 15 questions. We are moving on to the 16th question. What are the different types of navigation commands? Navigation means nothing but movement, right? So what are the different commands that we use to navigate? So we have 4 different commands that we can use to navigate. They are driver.navigate.to URL, driver.navigate.back, driver.navigate.forward, driver.navigate.refresh. So what does driver.navigate.to URL do? The browser command helps to navigate to the provided page URL. So whatever URL is provided as the argument, the driver will navigate to that URL. So driver.navigate.back will navigate back to the previous page. This command simulates the browser back button. You might have seen the back button in the browser, right? So that action is simulated by this command. Similarly, driver.navigate.forward will move forward, navigate forward to the page, and it simulates the browser forward button. And driver.navigate.refresh, as we have discussed, it refreshes the page. I hope it is clear. Can we move on to the next question?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay. Okay, the next question is, what is a web element? So the term web element refers to an HTML element. HTML documents are composed of HTML elements. Okay, an HTML element or a web element is written as tag. It consists of tag name. I'll show you. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Tag name. It consists of tag name. Then you have the content and you have the closing tag. So to get the web element object, we have to write the command driver.findElementBy.id, the value of the ID. So here username is the value of the ID attribute and it is used to identify that web element. So all the elements that you find on the application, a web page, is called web element because the application would be HTML code, right? If you inspect the inspect that page, you would see the HTML code. So each and everything that you see on the web page is a and where we can perform an action is called the web element. I hope it is clear.
Yes. I
Okay.
think we have some 2-3 questions in the chat window. So can we discuss those before moving to the next topic?
Okay.
Okay, so quit means will it close all the open tabs? That is a
Yes.
question.
Definitely it will close.
All the open tabs.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Second question, close. It will close all the focus of no. That's what is the difference between get and navigate?
Get and navigate. I told before, right? We have discussed. I think the 8th question that we discussed was the get and navigate command. I'll repeat once again. Actually, the function of both these commands is the same. Function is same. It is launching the URL. But what we achieve using the navigate command is that the browser history will be stored so that we can navigate backward or forward. It will store the browser history or the cookies so that we can go forward or backward. But in the case of get command, the browser history is not stored. Hence, the navigation is not possible. That is the only difference. The function of both the commands is the same. I hope it is clear.
Yes. Because we already explained in a couple of times the same question.
Yes.
So we can move on to the next one. What is the difference of driver.get and refresh?
Driver.get and driver
and refresh.
Refreshing is refreshing a page. Even if you give driver.get also, in turn it refreshes the page. There is not much difference. So if
Actually,
you
driver.get and refresh are two entirely different things. Okay, the get operation is used to launch the URL, and refresh is one of the activity that we perform once the application or the URL is launched. So that is the main difference.
Okay. And then the next question is, no, she is trying to explain here, like navigate is used to navigate particular URL and does not wait the page load.
Yeah, so there is normally there is a question asked like what is the difference between navigation, so as a part of navigation we can use driver.navigate to a particular URL, and what is the difference between just launching a URL, that is driver.get. So I think here the question is navigate is used to navigate a particular URL and does not wait for page load. So basically page load is a different activity. So navigation commands we discussed already, like there are different navigation commands including refresh, back, forward, etc. But when we do driver.get, okay, it will wait for the page load. Okay, so that is one of the difference.
Okay, so no more questions as of now, so it's good to move forward.
okay. So the 18th question, how will you find an element using Selenium? Or what are the different locators or tags you are familiar with? To find an element using Selenium, we need to use the find element method. And we have different locator techniques by which we can locate the element. So the method that we use is find element. If you want to find a element uniquely, then you use find element and you give by which locator technique that you need to locate the element. So the syntax is web element is equal to driver.find element by.id, and you give the attribute value. Okay, and this driver.find element will return a web element. Okay, and instead of id, the other locators that you can use to find an element are, you can use name, class name, tag name, css selector, xpath, link text, and partial link text. Instead of id, if you see in this line of code, if we use instead of id, you can use all these locators: name, class name, tag name, css selector, xpath, link text, partial link text. You can inspect that element and then get the value for all these, and then you can find the element. So if you ask what the different kinds of locators you are familiar with, you can say all these locators. And in order to find an element, we use driver.find element method. I hope it is clear.
Yes, we can. Yes, we are good.
Okay. Which locator technique is the fastest option for finding web elements with Webdriver? The fastest option for finding the web element is the locator technique is id. By using id, the elements would be we'll be able to find the elements in a faster way. Okay, the locator technique is id. Is it clear? We have learned about many locator techniques. Out of that, id would be the fastest option.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, so how do we find more than one web element? To find more than one web element, we can use the find elements method. It will return a list of web elements. And when you iterate the list, we can get the elements. To find more than one web element, we can use find elements method, and which will return a list of web elements. And to access that element, we can iterate through the list. That you all know how to iterate in Java, right?
Yeah, there's iteration in Java that you were discussed in one of the Java sessions.
So that iteration can be used, and then we can access the elements in the list. Whatever element that we need to access, we can access through iteration.
Okay, we got it.
Okay. So now we have completed 20 questions. Can we move on to the next set of questions? Any other questions that we need to discuss?
Maybe we may wait for a few seconds. Let me go to the chat window if there are any particular questions or not. I think we are good here because we are taking the questions in between each and every predefined question. So I think we can move on. Let's move on.
So the 21st question is the difference between find elements and find element. So find elements command in Webdriver can be used to locate a list of web elements within the web page, while find element is used to uniquely identify a web element within the web page. So that is the main difference. Okay, find element will identify one web element within the web page, and find elements will identify a list of web elements. So find element returns the first matching web elements if multiple web elements are discovered by the locator. Suppose in a web page that you have web elements with the same attribute value. So in that case, if you use find element, the first matching element would be returned because Selenium scans from top left to bottom. So whatever element that Selenium finds first will be returned. Whereas in find elements method, it will return a list of multiple matching web elements. And when you use find element, if you don't, if an element is not found, no such element exception will be thrown. In the case of find elements, an empty list is returned. And find element detects a unique web element, while find elements returns a collection of matching elements. I hope it is clear. Find elements returns the first matching web element, a unique thing, and exception will be thrown if no element is found. In the case of find elements, a list of multiple matching web elements will be returned, and an empty list will be returned if no matching element is found.
Yes, it's clear now.
Okay. So, what is Xpath? Explain with syntax, or how is Xpath determined? So Xpath is one of the common locator techniques that is used. Okay, so we'll move on to that. We'll find out what is Xpath and what its syntax is. Okay. So Xpath in Selenium is an XML path used for navigation through the HTML structure of the page. It is a syntax for finding any element on the web page. Okay, and the syntax of Xpath is you give double forward slash, then you specify the tag name, open the square brackets, you give @ symbol, you give the attribute, and then the value. The tag name specifies the tag name of the particular node, attribute specifies the attribute of that node, and value specifies the value of the attribute. And if you check, the Xpath locators can be in that attribute place, you can give ID, class name, link text, any attribute that can be given. So first, what you need to do is you need to inspect that element. The element will be that HTML code will be highlighted, and from that highlighted thing, you need to take the tag name and the attribute and its value and put it in this syntax for Xpath generation. I hope it is clear.
Team, any questions in Xpath and find elements, those two areas, because those are the most common questions that we used to see in almost all the automation interview questions. I think we have no more questions. In that case, I'll take it as an yes, so we can move forward.
Okay.
And let's move on.
Okay. So the 23rd question is what is absolute Xpath and relative Xpath? Or the interviewer may ask, what is the difference between a single slash and a double slash, double forward slash or a single forward slash? So we can have two ways of creating the Xpath, that is relative Xpath and absolute Xpath. The absolute Xpath has the complete path beginning from the root to the element which we want to identify. An absolute Xpath starts with a forward slash. You can see, right? It starts from the root /html/body /div of one /div of one /a. So if you want to navigate to the a represents the link tag, right? If you want to navigate to that, you have to write the complete path beginning from the root. Whereas relative XPath is direct referencing the XPath. Direct referencing that element. So the syntax that we checked in the last question is the syntax of the relative XPath. So it begins with a // then you give the tag name, then you give the @ symbol, then the attribute name and the attribute value. So a relative XPath starts with // and it is usually used in automation. Why is it relative XPath is used? Because if an element is removed or added in the DOM structure, the relative XPath is not impacted, whereas the absolute XPath is impacted. Why the absolute XPath is impacted? Because the one or more elements is removed, then you cannot direct, the path is not correct. The path will not be correct. If an element is added or removed, the path to that element that we want will not be correct. So we will not be able to identify the absolute path. We will not be able to identify the element using absolute path, and hence our test script will fail. Is it clear? Absolute XPath and relative XPath. This is one of the important questions that will be asked in the interviews. So are you guys clear on this? The two types of XPath and how you write the absolute and relative XPath?
Any more questions in this area? Because from this topic also we used to get many questions like which XPath that you usually use, is it relative or absolute, and how you're going to write the relative XPath. So these are all the common strategic questions that we always face. So any more questions in this?
And also one more thing, if you see, the absolute XPath will be lengthy. It will be difficult to maintain. While if you see the relative XPath, it is short. So that is also one difference. So the first difference that we discuss is the traversal. It mainly depends on the traversal. That is, absolute path will traverse from the root to the element. The relative XPath will be direct reference to the element. Absolute XPath is lengthy while relative XPath is short.
Okay.
Okay.
So okay, we can move on to the next topic. Yeah.
Okay, so when do we use absolute XPath? I told you that we rarely use absolute XPath, but there are cases where we use absolute XPath. It is when we cannot directly reference an element. So in that case, if an element cannot be directly referenced, then we use absolute XPath. That is, if that element, if you inspect the element and see the HTML code, if you don't find any attributes or there is no way to reference an element, you just have the tag name or anything like that, then we use absolute XPath. So when in cases where direct referencing of an element is not possible, we use absolute XPath. Is it clear?
Okay, so we have one question related to that. How do you find XPath if unique attribute is not present? We need to discuss that question in this session, or can we park it for the advanced session, upcoming part 2 session?
No, XPath. If we use XPath, like Samsar, if you want to add, you can add. Else, I will discuss.
Yeah, maybe Anju, you can go ahead with that.
Okay, so if you use XPath, XPath is one of the very efficient method to identify an object, an element uniquely. Okay, so if you write XPath, even if it is absolute or relative, it would be it would help us to identify the element uniquely. So if you use id or like by.id, by.class name, you wouldn't be able to identify the object properly. But in case of XPath, if you write even if it is absolute or relative, you will be able to identify the element uniquely.
Okay, so we can move.
Yeah, if relative XPath is difficult, then you can write absolute XPath. That will definitely identify that element. Is it clear?
Yeah, definitely. We can move on.
Okay, so can we write /div after the relative XPath? Definitely yes. So example, you are saying /input at name is equal to user. So what this statement will give is that it will first identify the element with input tag and the name attribute as user, and the div that is next to that will be identified. First, the element will be identified using the relative part, and the next the subsequent what we need to say that the next div element will be identified. So if this div element cannot be identified using the relative XPath, we can write the XPath as this, a combination of absolute XPath and relative XPath. That is /input at name is equal to user /div corresponds to an attribute that corresponds to a web element, and that cannot be directly referred. Okay, so in that case, what we need to do is like we need to identify the stable element, that stable in the sense that what we can identify, just an element that we can identify, and then navigate to the element that we want. That is what we are doing here. We are first identifying a stable element that will be the element with name attribute is equal to user, and then we are navigating to the next div. So in the next div is where our element is. I hope it is clear. Is there any confusion?
I think we are good here. Maybe we can take a separate session on how we can write the different types of XPath. Maybe it's a topic for another 35 to 1 hour discussion.
Yes. So if somebody asks you whether you can combine absolute path and relative XPath, it is definitely a yes. Okay.
And if we really want to dig into how we are going to write XPath, yeah, maybe we can plan for a separate session. If you really want to go to that topic as a separate session, please make a comment on the chat box so that we can plan a separate session with that XPath. Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, so the next question is write a relative XPath using contains or starts with text. So XPath we can write using starts with and contains, and this is the format. So it is it starts with a // tag name, then you give starts with and you give the attribute and the value. And if it is contains, it is like you give tag name, contains, at attribute, and give the attribute value. So where is this XPath used? So if you have a element with a very long attribute value, Okay, suppose the element that you identified has a very long attribute value. See, if this is the id is the id value will have message 1 2 3 4 5, suppose, but you want to cut short it, like it is an easy method to identify that. So you can use whatever elements that starts with message as the id, attribute value message, message, it will be identified. So contains also the same case. If the attribute value is very big, you can use a subset of that attribute value so that the element will be identified. You need not give the full text, I mean full attribute value. You can give a subset of that attribute value. So that is the case where starts with, contains, etc. are used. There are many Xpath ways to write the Xpath. These are few of them. Starts, you can find an element using starts with. You can find an element using contains. Feature of the Xpath. Are you clear? So as discussed before, if you want a separate section for Xpath writing, you definitely comment. We'll take a separate session.
Yeah, we can move on. We can move on.
Okay, so how do you identify a text box? So text box is a web element where a user can enter a text, right? So if you take the case of Facebook, if you want to log into Facebook, you hit the Facebook URL, you find a text box where you can enter your email ID and your password, and then you submit and you click the login button, right? The web element where you enter the username and the password, that web element, the type of web element is called a text box. So how do you identify a text box? So the steps to identify a text box is like, you should inspect that element and find the unique element. You can locate that element using Xpath or any other locator techniques. Okay, and then you get the element. So the action that we want to perform in that text box is that we want to enter value, right? So what function will we use to enter a value into a text box? It is send keys, right? So how do you identify a text box? We use the driver dot find element by dot id, and you give the id value of the id, and then you enter the text using dot send keys. Is it clear? To identify any element, may it be text box, radio button, checkbox, any web element, what you need to do first is to inspect the element and find a unique method to identify that element using find element and the locator technique. So once the element is identified, maybe a text box, a radio button, a checkbox, or any web element, then you can perform the required user action. Is it clear?
Maybe we can park here for
Okay.
any questions. Do you have any questions in any of the questions that we discussed so far? Yeah, I think we have questions. Maybe we'll check on that. What are pseudo web elements and how to locate these elements using Xpath? Pseudo web elements.
Pseudo web
And
element.
the next question is, what is the difference of contains and start with? Which one is easy to find? What is the difference of contains and starts? And which one is easy to find?
Okay. starts with is like if so 1 second.
Anju, maybe we can park that pseudo web elements for the upcoming session. We can
Okay.
we can move on to the next question, like the difference of contains and starts, which is easy to find.
Okay, which is easy. Like, I think contains is used like if this attribute, suppose that the attribute you are trying to locate an element. That element has a long attribute value. Suppose that. So suppose you are finding an element using ID, and that ID is a long one. Okay, so giving the long ID in the code would not look nice, right? So you can give a part of that code, may it be a beginning, end, or in between. Okay, so suppose the ID is Anju Elizabeth George. Let it be my name itself, Anju Elizabeth George. Okay, so you can give, if you want to give contains, you can give at attribute, you can give Anju, you can give Elizabeth, or you can give George. But that is not the case with starts with. Starts with, you need to give Anju itself or Anju Elizabeth. Did you understand the difference? The starting, when you give the starting of the attribute value, you can use starts with. If you want to give a part of the subset of the attribute value from the beginning or from the end or from in between, you can use contains. I think both of them will take the same time. I'm not sure the time taken to find the element. I think it is more or less the same time. Is it clear?
Yes, we are getting responses. Yes. So I take it as an S, so we can move forward.
Okay. Okay. So the 28th question, can we discuss?
Yeah, we can. We
Okay.
are getting some 2-3 questions in the Facebook. Maybe once we reach to the 30 questions, then we can move on to the questions in the YouTube.
Okay. What is the easiest way to get the value from a text field in a Selenium? So we have discussed in the earlier question how to enter a value in the text box, right? Text field is nothing but the text box. Okay, that is using the send keys. So when you inspect that element, you will not find a value attribute. That is the value. There will not be a value attribute, but you are entering a value. So how do you get that value that you entered? So for that, so once you enter the value, there will be a value attribute that will be generated, and it will have the value that you have entered. So for that, you use the get attribute, and then you give the attribute name. So if we use this method, we'll get the value of the attribute. I mean, value that we have entered in the text. So what we need to do is, like, you need to identify the element. Here, the element is identified by ID, and the user sends a Selenium as the text. And if you use the get attribute and then send value, then and if you're outputting it in the console, we'll get the value Selenium that is entered. So to get the value from a text field, what we need to use is the get attribute function, and the argument that we pass is value. Value is nothing but the attribute name. Is it clear?
Yeah, we can move on because we already getting into time, like it's 11:25. We'll discuss those two, and then we'll come back and take questions.
So the next question is, if you are given a drop down, then how will you select a particular option from it? So to deal with drop downs, we have a class in Selenium WebDriver, which is called the select class. So that select class is used for selecting and deselecting the options in a drop down. So if you want to select a particular option from the drop down, there are three methods. What are the methods? Select by index, select by value, select by visible text. So before using these methods, what we need to do is like we need to first import the select package and then create an object of the select. Okay. We need to find that select drop down by using any locator technique, and we have to create an object of select class and you give that element as the argument. Then you can use the three methods which I'm showing in the screen, like select by index, select by value, or select by visible text. Select by index is used to select an option based on the index. The index will begin with 0. Select by value is used to select an option based on the value attribute. Select by visible text is used to select an option based on the text over the option. Is it clear?
Yes, yes.
First, the package must be imported. Then you need to find the object. That drop down object should be found, and then you need to create an object of the select class and give the web element as the argument. And then one of the three methods can be used for selecting. Is it clear?
Yeah, we can move.
Okay. So the last question, I think it would be the last question, right, sir?
Yes, yes.
Time is almost there. Okay. So if you are given a drop down, then how will you deselect a particular option from it? So deselecting, instead of select, we need to give deselect. Okay. Select by index will select, deselect by index will deselect. Select by value will select, deselect by value will deselect. Select by visible text will select, deselect by visible text will deselect. So if you want to deselect, you give the deselect command. If you want to select, you give the select command. But make sure that you import the package, select package, and then create a select instance. You find the element and give the argument as the give the element as the argument when you are creating the object of the select class before you use these three functions. I hope it is clear.
Yes, I think in that area we have a question like difference between select by value and select by visible text. I think the question is like visible text and value. That is the difference.
Okay, so if you inspect select by value, is that you will be able to select an option based on the value attribute. Value attribute, how will you get? You need to inspect that element, that select drop down. The drop down you need to inspect, and in that HTML code, you will see an attribute called value, and value will have a value, that is value equal to, there will be in double quotes a value. That value, in this case, that value will be database. So there is a drop down. Imagine that there is a drop down and you are inspecting that drop down. In that highlighted code, right, which will be in blue, you will see that value is equal to database. So that database value will have to be given here. The select by visible text is the text that is displayed in the UI that you see on the screen when you load a web page. In the screen, it would be database testing. So that is the main difference. That is, visible text is nothing but what the user sees on the UI, on the screen. Value is something that is seen when you inspect that element. Value will be the attribute, and corresponding to that attribute, there will be a value. Don't confuse. Don't be confused. Value is an attribute, and corresponding to that value attribute, there will be a value, and that value we need to give. Here in this case, it will be database. Is it clear?
Yeah, Anju, definitely. In the chat box, he responded. He understood it.
Okay.
I think this drop-down list is a favorite topic. So we have 2 more questions. Can we go it?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So how to select dynamic value from a drop-down? That's the next question.
Dynamic value can be selected using index. You will not.
I think it's a generic perspective how to select a dynamic value from the drop-down. So there are different ways that we can use for. Is there any specific area that we need to discuss? Can you text in the chat box? Is there any particular scenario? Otherwise, it's a high-level topic.
If the drop downs are generated dynamically, we need to first manually see what value we need to. Then we need to basically when we are not when we cannot refer an element with value or text or something, what we usually do is like we identify the element using index.
Okay, we can move on to the next question. Can we?
Yeah.
Okay, value can be ID or name.
No, value is an attribute. Value is an attribute. What you can do is like if you inspect an element just like ID or name, there will be an attribute called value, and that value will have a value. Understood? Value is just like any other there is an attribute called value, just like ID, name, link text, like that. No, you if you inspect that element, you can see value written. Value is equal to something. So that is what we are referring here. Select by value.
Yes, we got it. We got it. I think we have, as we are expecting, like we have around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions in the YouTube that is specifically, that is related to Xpath only. So I think we'll have to plan for a detailed section regarding the Xpath. Yeah, definitely that we'll plan for a detailed section of Xpath in the upcoming week. So maybe that Xpath related questions we can park here and we can plan for a dedicated detailed session in the Xpath. Okay. Is that okay, Anju?
Yes, sure. Because it is a very vast topic. There are many things that we need to cover. We have just covered the high level, but if we want to go deep into that, a separate session would suffice.
Yeah, definitely we'll have to plan for, because we are getting many more responses in the Xpath area, especially in the YouTube.
Yes.
Let me check any more questions that we hear. Yeah, attribute name is equal to value. Is that right?
Yes, the attribute name is equal to value. Yes.
Okay, so we are good in that area. So, team, do we have any more questions in the topics that we related, but that we discussed today? We are happy to take up those. Maybe we can wait for a few minutes. It's already ahead of 5 minutes. So can we wait for 2 minutes for questions, Anju?
Yes, sure.
Team, please come in the chat box with your questions, that areas that we discussed so far. Any more questions here? We are not getting any more questions, so I will take this silence as a yes. So wait. I think we are getting something. Yeah. Okay. You said deselect, that is deselecting the drop down check, right? You said the deselect is that deselecting the drop down check.
Yes. Drop down check Yeah, if you have selected a value from the drop down, if you want to deselect that value, you can use that method.
Okay. We have a generic question like what in the questions that we discussed in the beginning, like, can you please repeat the advantages and disadvantages of Selenium?
You want me to repeat it again? Or will you watch the YouTube again?
Maybe unto those things that is already recorded in our YouTube, like
Yes, yes.
our YouTube channel is Obsqura Zone.
Yeah.
I would humbly request you to watch our YouTube session because it's already covered there. Yeah, I think we have the next. I think we have the next question. WebDriver driver is equal to new Firefox driver. How can we use the WebDriver interface without implement?
That is all. The drivers have all, the code has already been implemented, right? These drivers have been there are developers who have developed these. They have already implemented. We need not do that. It is all handled by them. We are just using them. We need not implement anything. Is it clear?
So the question is all about like how can we use the WebDriver interface without implement?
Yes. It is actually an architectural level question.
So you mean we need to discuss that in the second session? I mean in the upcoming session. Maybe we can.
Yeah, is it actually? It is like it is already the Chrome driver class and the Firefox driver class. They have already implemented the code is written like that. See, Chrome driver, Firefox driver, and all, they are classes which are implementing the WebDriver interface. That is architecture level. They have already implemented that. We are just using that.
Okay, got it.
Understood. The developers have already developed those classes like that. WebDriver has been developed by some developers, and they have given some methods that needs to be implemented by the Chrome driver class. The developers who have developed the Chrome driver class, they have implemented it by implementing the interface. So that is code level. The code level that we need not. There is no. If you want to know, you can dig deep into that. But at this point, I don't think it is required to discuss.
Yeah,
That is architecture level.
Okay, maybe we can discuss those in the upcoming session. So we have the next question. Can we use this option option like drop down dot select by text in brackets in quotes text, or use only visible text only?
Visible text only.
Okay.
That is how select class is implemented. In select class, these methods have already been implemented. Like I told before, we are using the methods that are in that class. So the methods that are in the select class are select by index, select by value, or select by visible text. So if you want to select anything, any of the options in the dropdown, we need to use these three methods.
Okay, so I think we are overshooting the time. So we have any more questions here? Otherwise, we'll just wind up for today. I think no more questions. So I take it as a yes. So thank you, Anju, for this wonderful session. And
thank you all. I hope everyone has understood. Do let us know if you have any doubts. We are happy to clear everything. And I request all of you to learn the concept very well so that you can confidently appear for the interview. Learn the concept well. Don't by heart, but learn the concepts thoroughly so that if the interviewer asks the question in any way, you would be able to answer it properly.
so Anju, why don't you give all the best for the
Yes,
upcoming
I wish every students the very best and a prosperous career. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, audience, for this wonderful support and coming with so many questions in the chat box. That is a real motivation for us to take this kind of a session. And thank you. A big thank you to Pradidhani team for this wonderful platform, this wonderful crowd. So once again, thank you for joining in this Saturday morning. So we'll catch up in the next session next week. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye. Thank you.